The grand chamber of Nexus Prime gleamed with a preternatural glow. Miriam Hayes stepped from the Earth shuttle, her diplomatic uniform pressed to perfection, eyes scanning the towering crystalline architecture that housed the Galactic Council for over 15 millennia. The air smelled of something resembling cinnamon and ozone, a peculiar mixture that reminded her this was not home. "Remember," she whispered to her team, "we represent not just our nations, but our species. The Peace Coexistence Manifesto must be presented with dignity and respect." Behind her, Dr. Raj Patel adjusted his technical equipment, nodding subtly. The Earth delegation had traveled 12 light-years for this historic moment, humanity's official invitation to join the Council of 12,000 species that had maintained galactic peace for 15,000 years. The welcoming committee approached, a diverse array of beings that defied human imagination. Leading them was Ambassador Zathara Kwan, a crystallian whose transparent body refracted the ambient light into rainbow patterns. Behind her floated representatives of gaseous species and several humanoid forms with varying anatomical features. "Ambassador Hayes!" Zathara Kwan's voice resonated through the translation device at Miriam's collar. "The Galactic Council welcomes Earth's delegation to Nexus Prime. Your species has been deemed worthy of consideration for membership after centuries of observation." Miriam smiled diplomatically. "We are honored. Earth has worked diligently to overcome our warlike past and establish a unified planetary government. The United Earth Peace Alliance brings our Manifesto of Coexistence as our pledge to uphold the Council's principles." The initial reception proceeded with ceremonial precision. Various ambassadors approached, making introductions in their native communication methods, some through sound, others through light patterns or electromagnetic pulses, all seamlessly converted by the translation devices. Dr. Patel leaned close to Miriam. "Their technology is exactly as advanced as our intelligence suggested. The translators are operating on quantum encryption protocols we've only theorized about." Miriam nodded, maintaining her diplomatic composure while observing the intricate social hierarchies on display. The Crystallians clearly held positions of authority, while Nebulon representatives, muscular beings with iridescent exoskeletons, seemed to function as security forces. As the delegation was escorted toward the Policy Verification Hall, Miriam felt a growing sense of accomplishment. Decades of preparation had led to this moment, humanity's first step into galactic society. None of them anticipated how quickly it would all unravel. The Policy Verification Hall towered hundreds of meters above them, its transparent walls displaying the stars beyond Nexus Prime. At the center stood the verification podium, where Miriam would present Earth's credentials and formal request for membership. Professor Tharksan, a Nebulon representative with prominent ridge-like features, suddenly stepped forward before Miriam could begin her presentation. "Esteemed council members," Tharksan's voice boomed through the hall, "I request an emergency intervention before these proceedings continue." The chamber fell silent. Zathara Kwan tilted her crystalline head. "State your concern, Professor." "The human ambassador has violated our most sacred principles," Tharksan declared, gesturing dramatically toward Miriam. Her preliminary address to our cultural delegation contained rhetoric that has incited unrest among Nebulon youth across 3 sectors. Reports indicate 17 incidents of rebellious behavior, citing human ideals of freedom, following her speech. Miriam's expression froze in confusion. "There must be some mistake. My preliminary address was a standard greeting following the Council's protocol guidelines." Before she could elaborate, security forces, primarily Nebulon, surrounded the Earth delegation. Their translation devices were deactivated with a swift electronic pulse. "By authority of the Galactic Council Safety Protocol," announced Zathara Kwan, "Ambassador Hayes will be detained for formal inquiry. The remaining delegation will be escorted to designated quarters until proceedings conclude." Miriam attempted to protest, but found her voice effectively silenced by what felt like invisible chains constricting her throat, a technology unknown to Earth science. The last thing she saw before being led away was the shocked faces of her team. Dr. Patel's expression particularly stricken with disbelief and growing anger. The trial chamber dwarfed the reception hall in both size and oppressive atmosphere. Arranged in concentric circles, thousands of council representatives observed from elevated platforms. Their faces, where applicable, impassive and judging. Miriam stood alone at the center, the silence binding her as effectively as the technology that prevented her from speaking, unless directly addressed by the high adjudicator. Zthara ascended to the central podium, her crystalline form catching and amplifying the light. This emergency session addresses grave allegations against Earth's ambassador Miriam Hayes. The charge: incitement of violence through cultural contamination of Nebulan youth. Miriam felt the invisible restraints loosen enough to permit speech. I request clarification of these charges and access to specific evidence. Under Council Communication Treaty Section 47, all species are entitled to review accusations in their native language. A murmur rippled through the assembly. Zthara form darkened slightly, the crystalline equivalent of a frown. Evidence has been processed through the Council's Translation Committee, she stated. Your words have been accurately interpreted according to Council standards. A holographic display activated, showing fragments of Miriam's preliminary address. But the translation scrolling beneath bore little resemblance to what she had actually said. Where she had spoken of peaceful cooperation and cultural exchange, the translation read, liberation from restraint and rejection of authority structures. This is not what I said, Miriam protested, feeling the restraints tighten. The translation is completely distorted. Professor Tharkson stepped forward. The evidence speaks for itself. Young Nebulans across 3 sectors have begun questioning our military discipline structures, citing human ideals as justification. This cultural contamination threatens the stability our council has maintained for millennia. Miriam struggled against the mounting pressure. I request immediate review by independent translators. This is a fundamental misrepresentation. Silence! Zthara voice reverberated through the chamber. Further disruption will result in complete communication restriction. As if to emphasize the point, the invisible bonds constricted further, allowing Miriam only shallow breaths. She glanced desperately around the chamber, noting with growing alarm that while many representatives appeared uncomfortable, none spoke in her defense. Meanwhile, in the quarters assigned to the Earth delegation, Dr. Raj Patel worked frantically. Utilizing his expertise in communication technology, he had managed to assemble a miniature recording device from components in his personal equipment. They've completely isolated her, he told the team's security officer, Commander Reyes. The translation inconsistencies are deliberate. I'm certain of it. Can you prove it? Reyes asked, keeping his voice low. Patel held up the nearly microscopic device. If I can get this to her, it will record everything, both what she says and what the Council claims she says. The quantum encryption they're using has patterns I've been analyzing since we arrived. Getting it to her will be nearly impossible, Reyes cautioned. They've surrounded us with guards. I have an idea, Patel replied, eyes fixed on the air ventilation system. The second day of proceedings began with increased tensions. Several council members had requested clarification on the evidence, leading to heated debates among the different factions. Miriam, still bound by the silence restraints, could only observe as her fate was discussed by beings who couldn't or wouldn't hear her side. What she didn't know was that Dr. Patel had successfully infiltrated the trial chamber through maintenance passages and, using Earth's most advanced stealth technology, had managed to attach the recording device to her collar during a brief recess. The device, barely larger than a dust particle, was now capturing every word and translation. When proceedings resumed, Zatharaquan addressed the assembly with increased formality. After reviewing the evidence, the council must now determine appropriate action. Professor Tharksen, present your recommendation. Tharksen stood, his exoskeleton gleaming under the chamber lights. The contamination is spreading. 3 more incidents of Nebulon youth resistance have been reported. For the security of our established peace, I recommend immediate execution of the human ambassador as a clear demonstration that cultural subversion will not be tolerated. Gasps echoed through parts of the chamber. A representative of a gaseous species formed intricate patterns that translated as objections to such extreme measures. The Zephyrian delegation believes this exceeds proportional response. The translator announced, alternative sanctions should be considered. The Crystallian High Council disagrees, countered Zatharaquan. History has shown that hesitation in addressing ideological contamination leads to widespread instability. The human concept of individual freedom threatens the structured peace we have maintained. Miriam felt the restraints loosen enough to speak. I request the right to defend myself against these accusations. The Peace Coexistence Manifesto Earth has brought demonstrates our commitment to— The manifesto is precisely the problem, interrupted Tharksen. It contains concepts fundamentally incompatible with our established order. Your species emerged from centuries of warfare. The Council cannot risk introducing such elements into our stable system. With growing horror, Miriam realized the truth. Her trial had been predetermined. Earth's invitation to the Council had been a pretext to assess whether humanity posed a genuine threat to the established galactic order. Her execution would serve as both warning and justification for potentially more extreme measures against Earth itself. In that moment of clarity, she made a decision. Whatever happened, the truth must return to Earth. She pressed her hand against her collar, hoping the recording device, if Patel had indeed managed to place it, was functioning. The debate continued for hours, but the outcome became increasingly clear. The majority of Council species, accustomed to deferring to Crystallian judgment in security matters, gradually aligned behind the execution recommendation. As the final vote approached, Chairperson Zarakov, one of the few Crystallians known for moderate views, made a last attempt at intervention. Esteemed colleagues, Zarakov's voice resonated differently than other Crystallians, with harmonics suggesting compassion. We must consider the broader implications. Executing an ambassador without conclusive evidence violates our own founding principles of justice. The evidence is conclusive, Zatharaquan responded coldly. The Translation Committee has verified the incendiary nature of the human's address. I request access to the original recordings for independent analysis. Zarakov persisted. Denied on security grounds, replied Zatharaquan. The time for debate is ended. We will now vote. The voting process was swift and devastating. Through a combination of political pressure, manufactured evidence, and genuine fear of human unpredictability, the Council voted 9,437 to 2,563 in favor of execution. Miriam stood silently as her death sentence was pronounced, her thoughts not on herself, but on the implications for Earth. If the Council would execute an ambassador on fabricated charges, what else might they be planning? Zatharaquan's voice cut through her thoughts. Execution will be carried out immediately as a demonstration of Council resolve. The human delegation will be permitted to witness via transmission before their mandatory departure from Council space. As guards approached to lead her to the execution chamber, Miriam made one final, desperate attempt. The people of Earth will know the truth, she declared, her voice carrying through the chamber despite the restraints. We came in peace, but we will not accept injustice. Remember this moment. It will define your legacy. For a brief instant, uncertainty flickered across several Council members' expressions, but the momentum was unstoppable. Miriam was escorted from the chamber as preparations for her execution began. In the shadows of the chamber's upper tiers, Dr. Patel activated the second phase of his plan. While the recording device gathered evidence, he had also prepared a transmission system that would broadcast the truth throughout Nexus Prime and, critically, to the Earth delegation ship. The execution chamber was designed for maximum symbolic impact. A circular platform surrounded by ascending rings of witnesses, with energy conduits channeling what appeared to be quantum-level laser technology, capable of disintegrating matter at the subatomic level. As Miriam was positioned at the center, she maintained her diplomatic composure, despite the terror threatening to overwhelm her. The Earth delegation watched from a separate chamber, prevented from interference but forced to witness. "Does the condemned wish to speak final words?" intoned the execution officer, a nebulon with ceremonial markings. Miriam straightened her shoulders, facing the assembly with dignity. "I speak not just for myself, but for humanity. We came to you with open hands and peaceful intentions. Your response reveals not our nature, but yours. Earth will remember this injustice, and history will judge your actions today." In that moment, Dr. Patel activated his transmission. Throughout the Nexus Prime complex, communication systems were suddenly overridden. Displays, meant to show the execution, instead revealed the recording from Miriam's device. Clear evidence of the Council's manipulation and the deliberate mistranslation of her words. Confusion erupted through the chambers. Zatharaquan shouted commands to terminate the transmission, but Patel's programming had locked out the override controls. For a brief, hopeful moment, it seemed the execution might be halted as the truth spread through the Council. Several representatives rose in protest, demanding immediate cessation of proceedings. But Zatharaquan, seeing her authority threatened, gave the execution order directly to the Nebulon security forces. Before the growing dissent could coalesce into action, the quantum lasers activated. In her final seconds, Miriam Hayes maintained eye contact with the camera she now knew was broadcasting to her people. Her expression conveyed not fear, but resolve, a silent message to Earth that some principles were worth dying for, but also that treachery should never go unanswered. The quantum beam engulfed her form, a blinding flash that momentarily silenced even the most vocal protesters. When the light faded, nothing remained of Ambassador Miriam Hayes except the recording device, which had been designed to survive even such extreme conditions. A young Nebulon, who had been swayed by the transmission, darted forward, retrieving the device before security forces could react. In the ensuing chaos, the evidence was passed through multiple hands until it reached a sympathetic council member with access to interstellar communication channels. 12 light hours later, the full recording, including Miriam's execution, reached Earth. President Elena Morales sat motionless as the transmission ended. The war room of the United Earth headquarters, deathly silent. Around the circular table, the Security Council's expressions ranged from shock to barely contained fury. "Verify authenticity," she finally ordered, her voice steady despite the emotions threatening to overwhelm her. The Chief of Intelligence nodded grimly. "Already completed. Madam President, Dr. Patel's quantum signature is embedded in the transmission. The evidence is incontrovertible." Elena stood, placing her palms flat on the table. "They executed our ambassador on false pretenses, an act of war disguised as justice." She looked at each council member in turn. "Recommendations." General Harlan Shaw, commander of the United Earth Fleet, spoke first. "Madam President, for the past century, while publicly pursuing peace, we have quietly prepared for the possibility that alien contact might not be benevolent. The United Earth Fleet currently maintains 1,500 warships with stealth capabilities that the Galactic Council is unaware of. Our intelligence suggests they believe us to be limited to solar system travel," added Admiral Chen, Director of Military Intelligence. They have no knowledge of our quantum drive technology or our defensive capabilities. Elena nodded. And the extermination protocol? Is it operational? Dr. Lisa Carter, head of the Biological Research Division, answered with clinical precision. Yes, Madam President. We have completed genetic mapping of all Council species, based on data gathered during preliminary exchanges. Targeted biological countermeasures are ready for deployment, designed to incapacitate rather than exterminate, per your standing orders. The room fell silent again, as the weight of the decision settled upon them. What they were considering wasn't merely retaliation, but potentially the complete dismantling of a 15,000-year-old galactic political structure. They believe us to be primitives, Elena finally said. Savages barely emerged from our warlike past. They executed Ambassador Hayes to send a message, perhaps as prelude to more direct action against Earth itself. She straightened. Her decision made. We will send our own message. Implement extermination protocol immediately. Primary target: military and political infrastructure only. I want the Council's ability to wage war eliminated within 72 hours, with minimal civilian casualties. General Shaw stood. The fleet stands ready, Madam President. One more thing, Elena added. Before we proceed, broadcast the recording of Ambassador Hayes' execution to all Earth citizens, along with my declaration of the extermination protocol. Our people deserve to know why we take this action, and the Galactic Council deserves to know that we do so with the full moral authority of a unified humanity. Within hours, Earth's response began. The recording of Miriam Hayes' execution, followed by President Morales' solemn declaration of the extermination protocol, was broadcast to every corner of human civilization. What might once have caused panic instead ignited a cold, unified resolve across the planet. Meanwhile, hidden shipyards throughout the solar system activated. The United Earth Fleet, a secret military force developed over generations as humanity's insurance policy against hostile alien contact, emerged from concealment. 1,500 warships, equipped with technology the Council believed impossible for humans to possess, departed Earth orbit in perfect formation. At the Biological Research Complex beneath the Sahara Desert, Dr. Lisa Carter supervised the final preparations of the species-specific biological agents. Unlike conventional weapons, these were designed with surgical precision, targeting neurological and muscular systems to incapacitate rather than kill, rendering enemy forces unable to operate military equipment without causing permanent harm. Each delivery system is coded to the specific genetic markers of its target species, she explained to her team. The crystallians will experience temporary crystal lattice destabilization, rendering them immobile but conscious. The nebulans will undergo exoskeleton rigidity without affecting their vital systems. One of her assistants voiced the question many were thinking. Is this not still an act of genocide, Doctor? Even if we're not killing them directly? Carter's expression remained firm, though conflict showed in her eyes. We are preventing them from waging war, not exterminating their species. The effects are temporary, lasting approximately 1 standard year, long enough for us to dismantle their military infrastructure, but allowing for eventual recovery. President Morales was explicit. We will not become the monsters they accused us of being. Across the solar system, humanity mobilized with efficiency that would have shocked the Council members who had dismissed them as primitive. Nebula intelligence operatives who had been embedded on various Council worlds activated, transmitting critical tactical information back to Fleet Command. General Shaw stood on the bridge of the flagship UEF Vengeance, monitoring the coordinated deployment of Earth's forces. The fleet would arrive at various Council worlds simultaneously, using quantum jump technology that the Council believed was centuries beyond human capability. All ships report ready, General, his executive officer announced. Jump coordinates locked for primary targets. Biological deployment teams standing by. Shaw nodded, feeling the weight of history on his shoulders. Proceed with Phase 1. Remember, our targets are military installations and government facilities only. I want minimal collateral damage. Throughout Council space, the carefully maintained balance of power was about to shatter. The first indication that something was catastrophically wrong came when the defensive systems on 27 Council worlds simultaneously failed. Crystallian security experts were baffled. Their quantum-encrypted networks had been penetrated with ease, overridden by code that seemed to anticipate every countermeasure. On Nexus Prime, Zathara Kwan was in emergency session with the Council's military leadership when the alarms began. "Impossible!" she declared, as reports flooded in. "The humans lack the technology for such coordinated attacks." "Incoming vessels detected," announced a Nebulan security officer, his voice strained. "Configuration unknown, but they're appearing simultaneously across all defensive perimeters." "How many?" demanded Zathara. The officer's exoskeleton paled, a sign of extreme stress in his species. "Hundreds, and our weapon systems are not responding." Before Zathara could issue orders, the view screens displayed a transmission. President Elena Morales, her expression as cold and implacable as space itself. "Attention Galactic Council. I am President Elena Morales of United Earth. You have committed an act of war against humanity through the unjust execution of Ambassador Miriam Hayes. We have initiated the Extermination Protocol in response. Your military capabilities are being neutralized as I speak. Your political infrastructure will be dismantled. The Galactic Council, as an entity, will cease to exist within 72 hours. Zathara crystalline form darkened with rage. "This is madness! You cannot possibly—" "We not only can, but we are," Morales interrupted. "Ambassador Hayes' recording device captured everything. Your deliberate mistranslations, your predetermined judgment, your execution of our representative who came to you in peace. That evidence has been broadcast to every world in Council space. Your own people now know the truth of your corruption." The transmission ended, leaving the Council chamber in stunned silence. Moments later, reports began flooding in of Earth vessels deploying unidentified aerosols into the atmospheres of Council worlds. Shortly thereafter came the first reports of Crystallian and Nebulan populations experiencing mass paralysis, unable to move but fully conscious. The Council's military response was hampered not just by the biological attacks, but by the sudden appearance of Earth operatives on key worlds, agents who had apparently been in place for years, gathering intelligence and preparing for this moment. Critical command centers were sabotaged from within, communications networks disabled, and weapon platforms rendered inoperable. On the Nebulan homeworld, Professor Tharksan watched in horror as his people fell where they stood, their exoskeletons locking into rigid immobility. The paralysis spread with terrifying speed, transmitted through the air circulation systems of major cities. "What have we done?" he whispered, moments before the paralysis claimed him as well. His last conscious thought was the realization that he had been manipulated by Zathara, used as a tool to justify an execution that had never been about justice, but about maintaining the Council's dominance through fear. Back on the UEF Vengeance, General Shaw monitored the progression of the Extermination Protocol with clinical detachment. "Phase 1 complete," reported his tactical officer. "Biological agents deployed to all primary targets. Neutralization at 87% effectiveness and rising." "Proceed with Phase 2, Shaw ordered. "Target the crystal spire on Nexus Prime. It's time to remove the head of the snake." The Vengeance positioned itself above Nexus Prime's capital city, its weapon systems targeting the 5-kilometer-tall crystal spire that had served as the Council's headquarters for millennia. The structure represented not just the political center of the Council, but its philosophical heart, a symbol of the order and stability they claimed to provide. Shaw hesitated only briefly before giving the command. "Fire!" The quantum destabilizers, weapons specifically designed to disrupt the molecular coherence of crystalline structures, fired in perfect synchronization. The crystal spire, seemingly indestructible for thousands of years, began to shimmer and dissolve from the top down, its perfect lattice breaking apart into a cascade of luminescent dust. Throughout Council space, the scene repeated itself. Earth forces systematically dismantled military installations, government complexes, and communication hubs. The speed and precision of the attack left no opportunity for organized resistance. Within 24 hours, the Galactic Council, the dominant political entity in the known universe for 15,000 years, had effectively ceased to function. President Morales addressed Earth's population as the first phase of the operation concluded. Fellow citizens, the initial objectives of the Extermination Protocol have been achieved. The Galactic Council's capacity to threaten Earth has been eliminated. I want to emphasize that we have deliberately avoided causing mass casualties. The biological agents deployed will wear off naturally, allowing the affected populations to recover. We sought justice, not genocide. She paused, her expression solemn. Ambassador Hayes gave her life in pursuit of peaceful cooperation. While we have been forced to respond with force to the Council's aggression, we remain committed to her vision of a galaxy where diverse species can coexist without domination or fear. Once the current operation is complete, we will extend an opportunity for the former Council worlds to establish a new framework for interstellar relations, one based on mutual respect rather than hierarchical control. As the 72-hour mark approached, reports from across Council space confirmed the complete collapse of centralized authority. Individual worlds began issuing surrender declarations or neutrality statements, while others descended into internal political chaos as power structures that had remained unchanged for millennia suddenly dissolved. On Nexus Prime, Chairperson Zara Kov, one of the few high-ranking Crystallians not affected by the biological agents due to her absence from the capital during the attack, sent a direct communication to Earth. "President Morales," she began, her crystalline form subdued in coloration. "On behalf of those council members who opposed Ambassador Hayes' execution, I request the opportunity to discuss terms for a cessation of hostilities. Many of us recognize the injustice being perpetrated, but lack the power to prevent it. Perhaps together we can build something better from these ruins." The response came swiftly. Earth would accept a delegation of representatives from former Council worlds, not as supplicants, but as equals in discussing the formation of a new interstellar organization. The location, the former Council chamber on Nexus Prime, now cleared of the Crystal Spire's remains. 6 months later, that meeting took place. Representatives from Earth, including Dr. Raj Patel and the twin daughters of Miriam Hayes, sat alongside delegates from over 8,000 former Council species. Notably absent were many of the Crystallian leadership caste, still recovering from the effects of the biological agents, and those like Zdara Kwan, who had been identified as directly responsible for the execution. Chairperson Zarakov opened the proceedings with remarkable candor. "We gather in the shadow of catastrophic failure, not just the collapse of the Galactic Council, but the failure of principles it claimed to uphold. Justice was corrupted by power. Truth was sacrificed to political expediency, and the price was paid not just by Ambassador Hayes, but by billions across countless worlds as the structure we depended upon collapsed." President Morales spoke next. "Earth did not desire this outcome. Ambassador Hayes came to you with a genuine vision of cooperation and mutual growth. Her execution revealed fundamental flaws in the Council's approach to governance, flaws that made the Extermination Protocol necessary. But destruction is only justified if something better rises from the ashes." Over the following weeks, the framework for a new galactic federation took shape. Unlike the hierarchical council, this would be a genuinely representative body, with distributed authority and transparent processes. Translation protocols would be independently verified. Judicial proceedings would require evidence accessible to all parties. Military power would be balanced rather than concentrated. On the final day of the conference, a memorial was unveiled in the center of what had once been the council chamber. A simple black stone monument bearing the names of diplomatic casualties from various species throughout history, with Miriam Hayes's name given prominence. The inscription, in multiple languages, "For Peace and Truth." Beside it stood a broader memorial, the Communion Spire, recording the names of all those who had suffered during the collapse of the Council and the implementation of the Extermination Protocol. Together, the monuments served as a permanent reminder of both the cost of injustice and the price of its correction. Miriam's daughters, standing before their mother's memorial, placed a small earth flower at its base. She believed in the possibility of genuine cooperation between different worlds. The elder twin said to the assembled delegates, "Not through dominance or fear, but through mutual respect and the recognition of our shared interest in a stable, peaceful galaxy." Dr. Raj Patel, now Earth's ambassador to the nascent Galactic Federation, added his own reflection. The recording device that captured Ambassador Hayes's final moments was intended to reveal truth. But the greater truth it revealed was not just about mistranslations or political manipulation. It was about the fragility of peace without justice, and the emptiness of order without truth. As the conference concluded, and the delegates departed to begin implementing the new framework, the memorial chamber remained open, a quiet space for reflection amid the bustling activity of reconstruction. In the months and years that followed, it became customary for new diplomatic representatives to visit the monuments before taking their positions, a reminder of both the potential costs of failure and the possibilities that awaited success. The Galactic Federation, unlike its predecessor, was built on the principle that true peace required not just the absence of conflict, but the presence of justice. That genuine stability came not from imposing uniformity, but from embracing diversity within a framework of mutual respect. And that power, without accountability, inevitably corrupted even the most noble intentions. Earth, once dismissed as a primitive world, barely emerged from its warlike past, now stood as a foundational member of this new order. The species that the Council had feared would bring chaos had instead catalyzed a transformation toward a more equitable galaxy, though at a terrible cost that none would forget. On the one-year anniversary of the Extermination Protocol, as the last of the biological effects faded from affected populations, President Morales addressed a joint session of Earth's government and Federation representatives. "A year ago, we responded to injustice with overwhelming force," she acknowledged. "We demonstrated that humanity would not be dismissed, deceived, or threatened without consequence. But true strength lies not just in the ability to destroy, but in the wisdom to build anew." Ambassador Hayes died, believing in the possibility of peaceful coexistence. The greatest honor we can pay her memory is to prove that her belief was justified, not through words alone, but through our actions in creating a galaxy where truth and justice stand as the foundations of lasting peace. As her words echoed through the chamber, the lights dimmed slightly, focusing attention on a holographic display of the memorial on Nexus Prime. The simple inscription, "For Peace and Truth," glowed softly against the darkness, a reminder of how much had been lost and how much remained to be built. In the years that followed, the scars of the Extermination Protocol slowly healed. The former Council species, freed from the rigid hierarchy that had defined their existence for millennia, developed new forms of governance better suited to their individual needs and values. Trade networks expanded, cultural exchanges flourished, and scientific cooperation accelerated technological development across the Federation. Earth continued to maintain its military capabilities, the hard lesson of preparedness not easily forgotten. but increasingly focused its resources on exploration and diplomacy. The United Earth Fleet, once the instrument of the Council's downfall, transitioned primarily to humanitarian and scientific missions, though a significant defensive force remained ever vigilant. Dr. Lisa Carter, whose biological weapons had been crucial to the Extermination protocol's success, redirected her research toward medical applications. The genetic knowledge gained through studying Council species led to breakthroughs in treating previously incurable human diseases, a small measure of positive outcome from work that had haunted her conscience. General Shaw, after overseeing the military transition, retired to become an advocate for balanced defense policies within the Federation. Peace through strength, he often said in his public addresses, but strength tempered by wisdom and restraint. And on Nexus Prime, now the capital of the Galactic Federation, the memorials continued to draw visitors from across known space. Some came to pay respects to those lost, others to contemplate the lessons of history, but all departed with a deeper understanding of the complex interplay between power, justice, and truth that shaped their shared future. The final entry in the historical record of the Council's fall and the Federation's rise came from an unexpected source. Professor Tharksen, who had recovered from the biological agent's effects to become an advocate for educational reform among his people. "We believed ourselves to be preserving peace," he wrote in his widely distributed memoir. "But we were merely enforcing stagnation. We feared change so deeply that we would execute an innocent, rather than confront our own limitations. The humans, whom we dismissed as primitive, understood something we had forgotten over our long history: that genuine peace cannot exist without freedom, that stability without justice is merely oppression in disguise, and that any system which requires lies to maintain itself deserves to fall. Ambassador Hayes," he concluded, "came to us with open hands, offering partnership. We responded with fear disguised as righteousness. The Extermination protocol that followed was not merely Earth's retaliation, but the inevitable consequence of our own moral failure. From those ashes, we now build something that honors her sacrifice, a federation founded not on control and hierarchy, but on the principles she died defending: peace through understanding, stability through justice, and progress through truth." As the new era solidified, the execution of humanity's Envoy and Earth's devastating response became more than historical events. They became foundational mythology for an interstellar civilization, learning to balance unity with diversity, security with freedom, and power with responsibility. The names Miriam Hayes and Elena Morales entered the pantheon of figures whose decisions altered the course of galactic history, for better and for worse. And on Earth, in a quiet garden outside the United Earth headquarters, a simple duplicate of the Nexus Prime Memorial stood. Each year, on the anniversary of the protocol's implementation, citizens gathered to place flowers and contemplate the thin line between justice and vengeance, between necessary force and excessive retaliation. For in the end, the true legacy of the Extermination protocol was not the destruction it caused, but the understanding it forced upon a galaxy: that peace without justice cannot endure, that power without accountability corrupts, and that even the longest established order can crumble when it fails to uphold the principles it claims to defend.